I'm Kirk Hanson, Executive Director of the Markkula Center for Applied Ethics at Santa Clara University. In this video, we present Hank Shea, former federal prosecutor in Minneapolis, and now a distinguished senior fellow at the University of St. Thomas Law School. Shea visited Santa Clara University and the Markkula Center to talk to our Business and Organizational Ethics Partnership on February 3rd, 2010. In this excerpt, he discusses why white-collar crime occurs and what business and law students and business people can do to prepare themselves not to succumb to the temptations to become the next white-collar criminal. Has the recession affected white-collar crime? Do we have more white-collar crime today with the recession?
Well, it certainly seems that way. I think there's two ways you can look at it. Clearly, more schemes have come to light because of the recession. Ponzi schemes in particular have been ongoing, and now because of people asking for an accounting or asking for their money, there's been more detection and therefore more exposure of wrongdoing that's been going on for some time. The second part of that is more troubling, though. I think economic difficulties make people sometimes do desperate things. Good people, when pressured, can make very bad decisions. And whether it's a small business owner who decides to borrow, quote-unquote, from the state sales tax to keep the doors open, or the employee who decides to borrow, quote-unquote, from the company till to be able to pay those bills that are coming due. Temptation is always there, but in times of economic difficulty, it can lead people to do desperate and often foolish things.
Is white-collar crime inevitable? Are we always going to have it with us, and are there always going to be prosecutors like you in your former life, that have to go after white-collar criminals? Is white-collar crime worse today or better today than 50 years ago?
Well, in terms of white-collar crime, it unfortunately will always be with us. That's because humans are subject to temptation. They are sometimes weak and sometimes succumb to that temptation. So we will always have people who break the rules. The challenge for us is to limit and ideally to prevent it as much as possible. Whether it's more prevalent now than 50 years ago, people would certainly seem to think that's the case. The media and the internet make the detection and the prosecution of white-collar crime much more readily identifiable. It's repeated. It almost becomes a daily part of the news. And that's unfortunate because it gives people the impression that others are bending the rules or fudging the numbers or cutting the corners. And I think the reality is that it's not necessarily less prevalent than it was 50 years ago. We're learning so much more about it because it's communicated so much more widely.
You've prosecuted quite a number of white-collar criminals. In their stories, is there a moment of truth where they make the decision to go criminal, to start engaging in criminal behavior? Is there a moment of temptation or something you can point to and say, here's the moment I want to prevent others from going through?
Yes. Even though they would not label it as a criminal act, almost every crime starts with a small, almost minor transgression or compromise. You're faced with a decision to do either the right thing or the wrong thing, and for whatever reason you decide to step down the wrong path and make that first intentional misstep. That is the key for everyone, and it can be as something as minor as signing a document that you know not to be correct, or telling a lie with the idea that you're just going to be temporarily deceiving your boss or some other person. Once you start down that road, once you purposefully decide to do the wrong thing, a very dangerous door has been opened, because almost inevitably another temptation, another opportunity will present itself, and the second time it becomes a little bit easier than the first. And once you do it a third or a fourth time, you've got a pattern of conduct, you've got something that's going to be very difficult to stop.
You have been talking to law students and business students around the United States about white-collar crime, in part to make them aware of it for their professional careers, in part to prevent them from falling into the same traps. How does a student today prepare himself or herself not to succumb at that moment and make a decision to engage in improper and criminal behavior?
Well, two things come immediately to mind. First of all, figure out who you are. Determine what you stand for and what principles or values are important in your life. And then defend those principles when they are challenged in everyday life, in the workplace, wherever. And second, don't think you can do it alone. Find mentors, find teachers, find people who you can confide in, who you can seek advice from, and who can help you understand and do the right thing when you are in a quandary about the right course to take in your life. Those are two things that any student can benefit doing throughout their life.